Yeah. They haven't started yet.
What do you do?
Well, this is the board meeting.
Oh, okay.
I'm waiting for the people,
Oh.
yeah,
Yeah. I'm going to sleep.
yeah, okay.
I'm going to sleep.
Did you take a chew?
I took a half chew.
Okay,
Half a chew. Okay.
all right. You can turn,
I won't fart when you start or anything.
he probably can hear you sing.
I swear he was, but.
Sure. Okay.
Mhm.
No.
I just wanted to make sure I.
Hi, Dan. Hi, Marco.
Hi. Let's sit here so you can see that. Oh, sure. Yeah. Nothing minutes.
We have the camera here, but are working on getting it set up.
Okay. No rush. Elaine, are you there?
Elaine's here, yes.
I'm here.
Congratulations, soon to be grandma.
How did you hear about that? It's a secret.
From the horse's mouth.
Oh, yeah, the one with the horse.
I was gonna say it wasn't, it
No,
wasn't me.
Linda. Oh,
No,
from
no,
you.
it was your,
Okay.
it was your
I thought it was
son.
Oh, man.
So you would tell.
I don't know, it's not, usually you just plug it in and. Oh, you probably have to, you have to select it in settings, probably.
And then go up.
Mhm.
And then click the video on.
There's,
You all are so
No,
high
They're in
tech.
Greece.
I'm gonna have to adjust my background.
I kind of like the,
I saw you the other day, but I didn't talk to you.
Oh, I didn't, I'm sorry.
I just scoffing out and.
you know, the audio,
You know, it's
Mhm.
UV material.
the audio sucks.
Does it? Okay.
It's like,
Audio is on. I turned.
Did you have any tricks, Dan? This is the first time I'm doing it on my.
You may be able to, yeah,
I-
That little arrow, yeah, and now go to the HD Pro webcam at the top there for microphone.
when Dan talks and Desiree, it's fine, but it's in your area that it gets kind of muffled and. If you can't, I'll deal with it. I'll be able to.
I don't think we can hear you at all anymore.
Yeah, that I can't deal with. No lip reading by me. I think we lost the camera.
Mhm.
Okay, camera's back.
Maybe try it on my laptop.
I think you're okay. Just go on. I think for what, maybe it was just some glitch or something.
Is it better
Okay.
now?
Yes, much
Yeah.
better.
Okay,
Okay, great.
so we can call this meeting to order. And our first order of business of grandmother and now a new mother-in-law, I think we've completed that, okay. So first of all, we need to look at the meeting minutes of the 28th and make sure that they read well.
Printouts too, if you want.
I'll take one.
Did get them up late. My apologies.
I, no, I.
It should be great.
I mentioned. such things. And if you think that it was tough.
Damien was on his way to the neighborhood. What, did you say Damien?
No, Dave.
Oh, David.
Mosquito, in the tank.
Well, I move we accept the minutes.
I second.
Um, Any discussion changes? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any nays? Thank you. We have a courtesy review for this chapel, presented by Elaine.
Yes. It's probably easiest if you go ahead and run it from there.
Very key. Okay.
Not for the courtesy, because we won't really be voting on anything. We will be reviewing the,
Is that the,
and looking to see if there's anything
It's,
that we need
The PowerPoint.
to give.
first one and second? I'm assuming the two?
Yeah, the try to.
This one, yeah.
It was, you know, anybody here that kind of cool.
Really?
Mhm.
So what I'd really like to do, I wish David were here, is to go and look at some of these things, which will take us 10 minutes, 15 minutes to actually walk around and look at them. What I've done is just made a list of all the things that we want to do. And so the purpose of this meeting is to figure out what can we do now? What do we have to do now? And what can we do as minor reviews? Or if we just put it all into all one, we'll do the emergency fixes now. And do a full review and then just chip away at it. So this chapel, there's been a lot of deferred maintenance for a few years, and some of these things are kind of urgent. The only one that's really urgent on the chapel itself is the door, one of the doors. So let's just talk, I'll go ahead and advance that. This is the chapel, and you guys are all familiar with it, I'm sure. That's the west side. So the list on for the chapel itself are to replace the west side door, that door you see there, because it's falling apart. The west side deck and railing also falling apart, not super urgent. Repair the stucco in the northwest corner, which is the end over to my right or over to my left, where that
At
down,
the front of the chapel.
where the downspout is, you see over there, and we can go
Okay.
look at that.
Towards the front.
And then there's some small stucco cracks around the front door that just need repair. So that's for the chapel itself. That's the door from the inside. You can see that it's sagging. It's not even watertight anymore.
And I believe that when we were looking at it, you could see through some of the panels that aren't reflected here. That like the cross panels. or
Yeah, and
the
that's
piece
true on
Panels are,
all these doors that we're
Yeah.
talking about replacing.
yeah.
Is that David?
David. David.
I didn't have any meeting. Yeah.
The other thing that I put on this, I'm sorry, Dave, I'm gonna go ahead if you don't. mind.
okay, sorry.
I put on this sheet is the types of buildings. San Pedro Chapel itself is a landmark. So go ahead into the next picture. Same sort of thing. Those are the same picture, actually. Built 1932, restored 2007. So these doors are all put in 2007. And it's a 5-panel door. Had to be either custom ordered or built
And what's the plan? Will you build
to
it
replace it.
to replace it identically?
Yeah.
And I guess my concern with replacing it with something identical, I mean, it's not even 20 years old, it's not very
right,
good,
yeah, well, it gets a lot of exposure on the west side there.
yeah.
So I can tell you that no door supplier in town would even warranty a door that has that minimal amount of cover.
Oh, really?
Because it's so exposed.
It probably needs a little bit more frequent maintenancing as a longer term strategy for the next door. They have to be coated pretty regularly.
Okay, so moving on to the support building. That's the building directly south of the chapel. It was built in 2007. The roof, I don't know when the roof was last recoated, but everybody who's been up there in the past 2 weeks said it's toast. So we've got to get that repaired, and it just means recoating it. But you see the parapet along the top there, that top layer,
Mhm.
it's very worn. And the question was, should we try to put something on the parapet to preserve it? The roofer that we're talking to now says he can put a metal cap over that, and we can go look at it. And you'll see where there's a metal flashing above the porch roof right there. So we could actually mimic that metal flashing. Or we could leave it galvanized, because the chapel has some galvanized flashing too. But let's go look at that.
So the roof hasn't been recorded since.
I don't know. I can't find any records of it. You know, I mean, that's a really long time to not recoat a flat roof, right?
And it's not leaking?
It is leaking on the backside into one of the eaves, but not into the building itself.
I just.
Go ahead and move on. That's the back side of that's the west, the east side, and you can see the parapet where it's starting to break down. And if you, once you go out there, you'll see the flashing that's already on there. Somebody put metal flashing on it. I don't know if that was another roof job sometime in the last 15 years. I don't know.
It's just adobe erosion
Yes,
from elements. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you for
yeah,
clarifying.
yeah. Go ahead. This is the Adobe house. This is the oldest building on the property. Again, renovated 2007. The windows and doors were replaced then, and the windows are not great, but they're okay. That door is not terrible, but the back door is literally disintegrating. It's we're keeping it locked because it's totally cockeyed. The other thing about this building is someone put a skim coat on it, a plaster skim coat, and then it's been painted over that. So there's separation of the plaster skim coat. We need to figure out what to do with that. We need to have somebody, I think Bob Vent was in the original restoration, either Bob Vent or Bob Lanning. And I had him come over here, but that was probably years ago.
Could you repeat that? What's separated?
The skim coat, so you'll see it when we walk over there. We're just gonna walk over there and do a quick tour.
Eric Beans.
He looked at it, yeah, last year,
His
yeah,
advice was to basically,
take it off.
well, to patch where you need to, take off where you need to, and sort of fill everything.
Yeah, try to match it,
Most of it is below waistline.
Yeah.
It's falling off. He said you could probably just take off everything below that level and
Go over it.
redo line plaster. So to avoid replastering
Yeah.
the entire structure.
No, I wouldn't want, no, it doesn't need that. And then there are also there's some adobe work that needs to be done over those lintels. Go ahead. That's the back door, same thing, and you see in that corner, once you walk over there, you'll see the condition of that corner. That corner is a little unstable, but nobody's suggesting do anything about that.
It's a little touch.
That's the Ramada, that's on this side of that building, on the Adobe house. And those are the Ramadas. I didn't put anything about the Ramada in this list. Dan keeps telling me it's gonna fall down. It's like,
I'm not the only one.
when it falls down, we'll call the insurance guy.
Well.
I don't think it hasn't been treated, has it, with any kind of boiled linseed oil or anything, or Watco?
Yeah, it's been treated, and it's not that, it's that the whole thing is probably sinking.
Oh, okay.
Structurally compromised in multiple places. Two of the 6 posts are sunken lower than the other 4 of them.
Yeah,
The whole thing is on tilt.
cockeyed, yeah.
Well, other than that.
Base of the Adobe building.
Some of
Probably, yeah.
Will it pull it?
But we're not gonna let
Pull
it, we're not gonna let it fall down. And then the other two. The other ramadas over in the right-hand corner, those are just, we call them relay ramadas. That's where the slabs are. Those are okay. There's one post that is propped up with another post. So we haven't done a real examination yet. Might need some shoring up. Go ahead. Turner, that's this building here. This building is not historic. It's contributing non-historic. It was built, I think, in the 60s. And it was again restored 2007. It got into this shape then. And then we did some interior stuff last year. The roof is leaking. The roof is in bad shape here. There's that front window is leaking. If you look at the baseboard along that wall, you see water stains. So we think that's coming from that window. It's got to be resealed. Parapet cracks kind of everywhere. The roofers can fix that, and stucco cracks above the door. And they won't fix that. They'll fix all the parapets, but they won't fix the rest of the stucco cracks and stucco problems. And then that's building here from a different perspective. That's in the back. What we want to do may not be this year, but I may want to put that on this permit. Is there, you can't see them, but I can open the door and show them to you. 2 tin sheds back there in the backyard that are awful. They leak, they're hot, they're cold. That's where all of our neighborhood files are stored.
Oh, great.
Photographs and archives, all kinds of stuff in there. I would like to take those out and put in a tough shed. The only place you can see that backyard is from the alley.
Okay, so I guess our.
I'm gonna do one more
Yeah,
slide
yeah.
and then let's go back, yeah. Okay. Capellita. The Capellita is a reconstruction of a rubble that was found. That was the original chapel on this property in about 1900. And it was reconstructed, I think in 97. But you can see the top, again, the parapet, but that's all just raw adobe. It needs to be patched or replaced. Some of that adobe needs to be replaced.
And what's the roof like on that?
I don't know. I would ask anybody to look up there.
I would. When you got your roof on here.
Yeah. So that's just to orient you to what we want to look at quickly, and then if we can just do it in like 20 minutes and then talk about it.
Okay, well, and I think.
Any
the-
questions?
The most important thing is to figure out what's gonna take a formal review
And what needs to be
and
done
what
right
needs
now,
to be-
like the
what-
roof.
yeah, like I would think all the roofs just
Anything that needs to hold water.
now,
And
that's what I would,
doors, and luckily there's only this window. Door
yeah.
goes up.
It seems to me that, except for the discussion about the parapet metal capping, the roofs can be recoded right away. And we can do a minor review around that capping, because that's the only visual element. That's just regular maintenance, and it seems that that would be allowed without even a board intervention and keep these buildings sealed up. And if the doors are also in an emergency condition, I don't see any reason, if they're doing a direct replacement, that the board is gonna stand in the way of the neighborhood accomplishing that.
Yeah, the only thing that requires some design decision is that cap. on
Mhm.
that parapet. Because
Well,
everything else is gonna be replaced in kind.
right, but the stucco, I think needs,
Yeah,
it needs to be submitted.
yes.
I think
Yeah.
all these things need to be submitted. It's not that you can't go ahead and do those emergency repairs, but
Yeah,
that would be
and
my,
I think, they say it's gonna be a wet monsoon, so I think we've got to do it in the next month.
I do too. So do we want to run and take a look? Anybody?
Yeah, let me just open this door and I'll show you.
So Dan and Margot, talk about your side. We'll be back.
We'll see you guys soon.
Well, Dan, do they really have to have a permit or submit something for a roof repair to coat? A lot of those.
Um,
repairs?
Save your
Yeah.
question, Margo.
What?
We're halfway out the.
That's all right. Go halfway out
She
the
asked, do we
door.
need a permit or anything for a roof?
No.
And I think the answer is,
Not
if
for
we're,
recode.
yeah, if we're recoding, no.
I don't think
If
so,
we're
yeah.
fully replacing,
We're not
still.
I got a
But-
bid for.
But I agree with
Remember,
what Briggs said. It doesn't seem like you should need a permit for most of that stuff.
Well, but I just want you all to think in context for windows and doors
Yes,
with anybody else coming in.
okay.
Because we
You wanna
gotta
set-
set the precedent of
Okay.
making sure the right things are happening every time we do them.
Well, for the doors and windows, I agree.
I don't
Yeah, I think
those type of things I've been inside.
doors, windows, the cap.
Doors.
Well, I'm looking at the code right now too,
Okay.
to review for all this stuff.
Okay, all right.
With the top shed.
So they're.
So if I want to get my roof recoated and the top of my parapet coated, do I have to have a permit for that?
I don't think you would have to do it for the roof. The parapet, if you can see it from the right of way, if you can see it, I think you may need to. Like the cap, like I think that cap that they were talking about,
Yes.
it just depends on whether or not you can actually see it. But coating of the roof is like maintenance stuff. I don't think
Yeah,
there's any
yeah.
issue with that.
All right. Well, I'm going to take a little break.
Okay, I'm just here if you need anything.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks.
Okay, we're starting to trickle back in.
Okay.
Right.
It's compromise the true.
It's kind of like an opportunistic effect, it's free to express.
Okay, so,
So this is courtesy, but
right,
I'm really looking for some direction.
my opinion is that we have so much controversy in the neighborhood about so many of these details like doors, windows, capping. That I would prefer to have one submission for this work. And know that there are certain things that you're going to move ahead on because they are emergency. They have emergency needs, and I can't imagine that they would be not approved by this board.
I have a question. Or emergency repairs. It's sort of a gray area as far as it's written. Right, it doesn't actually say you must have a review before you proceed with emergency repairs, but it implies that in some regard, is the city okay with proceeding with emergency repairs prior to a review? Is this something that, you know, you have to have a review and then you can proceed with your emergency repairs?
That's a good question. I don't know if I have the answer at the top of my head. I don't know if you know, Dan, happen to know. I don't know if
I
you
mean-
heard the questions about emergency repairs.
Yeah, I think it depends on the scope. You really should, I mean, I think okay, so it's something that, so if it's something that's an absolute emergency that needs to be done because of health, life, safety, I don't think we have the ability to necessarily hold that up necessarily. But I
So
also
just
think,
think about things like water ingress from doors and windows and things that could compromise the structure if not taken care of in the immediate future.
yeah,
And we
I
see
mean,
those quite
yeah.
frequently, and I don't think they qualify under emergency repair. That's not how we've been processing them. Yeah.
The way I read the code though is that maintenance stuff, you know, for the most part, doesn't really require review. So I think there's things like the coating of the roof and et cetera that you can do now that wouldn't necessarily have to require a review. Most things do require a review in the HPZ, however.
How about capping the parapet? Would that be considered a minor review or a review, or is that something that is just a repair, like putting a new layer of roofing on?
And Desiree, feel free to correct me on this. But the way I see it is that because it might change the visual appearance of it, I think it needs to go through a review.
Mhm.
Our code, yeah, it's very inclusive. So almost everything, except maybe a little bit stucco here, certain things. And even I think there's like a downspout. I think that's in the code too.
Mhm.
But yeah, I would have to look at our code and really go line by line and see, okay, what is minor review, what could be done maintenance, and that's something that I could follow up with you, but I would need to look
Okay,
side by side.
and can it all, like a list like this, could it all be considered one minor review? So that it
If
would-
everything qualified for a minor review, it could all be one. Yeah, we wouldn't.
Yeah, okay.
And I don't think anything's changing, except that there's nothing visually changing, it's all repair in kind, except
The cap.
the cap, if we use that metal cap.
And the door, you might change the appearance of the door on the.
On the chap door?
No, on the Adobe building.
The front door.
the front door on the Adobe building so that it matches the chapel?
No, it's the same. No, they would be the same. Same as the doors that are there now. But you're saying use a 5-panel door instead?
Like the back room.
Yeah.
I mean, it would
Moving
make-
towards more continuity on the site.
Mhm.
Yeah, the 5-panel door seems to be more within the historic character, but that would, like, in terms of feedback from a design perspective, I think other people are feeling that too, that the contemporary doors are fine, and if you end up for budget reasons having to replace in kind with what's already been approved in the past, that works, and I think this board would be supportive of moving towards a 5-panel door that was more similar to the one that's on the chapel.
Yeah, and that door is not in terrible shape.
The
Front.
The front door.
I mean, it's not as, well, now that I don't know that they would qualify as emergency state. I'm still gonna use the word emergency, not an emergency repair like the chapel door and the back door of the defensive house, but we'll need to replace the next 2 to 3 years.
Oh, yeah, before that.
And if you're gonna do those other doors, you may as well leave this one now.
Does the front door fit on the back door of the Adobe?
They're almost the same size, but I wouldn't.
When we use that, because
They're both contrast. They're both.
They're both just not great doors in the first place.
My only other feedback that I have from a maintenance standpoint, I've just, any building inspection I've ever done always mentions grading, and just if you're doing a maintenance turn on this property, just considering grading the property so that all of the water is flowing away from the buildings. Not like, we do not need earth excavators. There's just a few areas where water drainage has created a little bit of erosion to allow for water cooling.
We had that
Yeah, so-
recommendation
So
from
Eric,
too.
Eric Haney, when he came out, he suggested, basically, because of the coving that you see around the base of the chapel,
Mhm.
the base of coving of the adobe, one of the fixes for that is to make soil cement around the sort of just that skirt, right? That 2 to 4 foot space sort of that surrounds the chapel immediately. And like you said, pitch it away, right? And the soil cement should add some rigidity to that area while still allowing it to be porous enough that it can, breathe. And will potentially allow better runoff so it doesn't, leach into the adobe of the chapel. So that's one of the things we're looking at.
Yeah, and I think just any solution, these are historic buildings and there is no permanent solution. They are an ongoing maintenance joy. That's part of just the nature of keeping buildings going. So, like,
Another thing you suggested was put in prickly pear front.
Yeah.
to stabilize the,
No,
No.
prickly pear actually pulls
Sucks the
water
water out.
Okay.
away from,
Yeah, away from the
yeah, it's
building.
like a great solution to basic code.
never heard that one.
Pretty cool.
That's all I have for this, unless there's more.
okay, do you need anything else? from
No,
us?
it's just,
Okay.
it's just
Bring to an Eric who was
Eric Meads.
Who's?
The
He's a local WS.
design build,
He's
Contract.
Contract.
but he does a lot of restoration.
He did, I think he worked with Bob Ben on that, on the original restoration,
Yeah, maybe.
and if I remember right. And he's done. What are some of the other projects he's done?
Oh, I think they're doing Vale Post Office and some other stuff. I don't know. Well, yeah, if I can get some direction on whether I can put it all on one minor, or if we say, oh, stuff shed needs to be a major, or if it's, I mean, none of it is significantly changing. But it's just accumulated maintenance.
Yeah, I'll follow up.
Okay,
Thank you, Desiree. Okay.
I'm just gonna follow up with the final item. If you need to get these roofs coated, I would move forward with that sooner than later. It can be long formatted to schedule roofers going into the monsoons. And if they get here, there could be a good wait. So I'm in support of this repair happening without code review. It is regular maintenance to coat your roof.
Anything else? anything else? No, good. Okay, so, Elaine and do you want to talk about the design of the guidelines and your start with that?
Cool it off in here a little. I did get a bid for a new AC for this building.
I'd say,
But
but
it was like,
I was off the board and onto the property management team.
no. Well, all the guys bailed. I mean, that's what happened. Even the guys who were doing it for the last few years. So the design guidelines, are we up to that? So those are on there too, and to just recap, you guys last approved this on January 27th. Yeah, it was that long ago. And then we went through, there should be a PDF there. Yeah, good.
Can you all see the PDF?
No,
No.
So.
Thank you for.
And
all your
Desiree,
work.
if you want to share it with me, I can also share it on my screen too.
Okay. Is it this one? Can't see. Should we? It's that one. Okay,
No,
that
that's
was
the,
about
just
this
close
one.
that.
Should be that.
It's not even,
Okay.
yeah, stop sharing that. The PDF or the
It's-
PowerPoint.
Don't do this.
Get the Zoom
The
timer.
Zoom might die on
Oh,
making it work too hard. Just fair warning, if Zoom closes, just rejoin in maybe 2 minutes.
I think
Looks like I'm the host now.
I think so. I think we're twosome here.
Guess so.
Is she trying to get this so that we can all see it?
So we can see it, yeah. And so I think if she sends it to me, I'm happy to share it. It might be easier actually.
Okay, she had you posted as a co-host.
Mhm.
All right, can you all hear us?
Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna try to share again.
So if you,
This time it's on.
close that one, close the PowerPoint.
It's weird because it's not.
Well, where are we in the process? I think we're all wondering.
Well, is Margot back on?
Mhm,
Yeah,
they're
okay,
on.
so I'll tell you where we are in the process. So you approved it on January 27th. We went to PRS and went through 2 rounds, I think, with them. They had some really good suggestions. So we went back and modified it according to their suggestions. And then when it got to landscape, we started discussing landscape in the last meeting. And their recommendation was to go to the Historic Landscape Subcommittee of the Commission, which we did last week. So the topic about landscape was twofold. One is that it seems to come up and get lost, it seemed, we start to review it. And then it gets lost in the mix of getting it on the permit, actually getting a landscape plan in the board. So, because they're all landscape architects and they do all the reviews for any of the public properties. Then what they were suggesting is don't treat everything as landscape. When we're talking about the bosque, we're talking about the park, the bosque, the streetscape, and then people's yards. And this is kind of where we bogged down before, talking about people's yards, right? So they said treat it as landscaping, which in their definition means anything that's, and we could read the definition, it sort of clarified it all for me. That it's something that's designed, it's not like natural
Right.
landscape, right?
That's common.
Oh.
So we made those changes and got them ready to go back to PRS. But they didn't have, we didn't have enough time. To bottom line,
The PRS didn't have it.
they didn't, yeah, and I couldn't get them done until tomorrow, so,
Yeah.
and that's not enough turnaround.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I observed from the city is that they really were in support of the amount of detail that is now in our design review guidelines. I think we initially, when we did them so many years ago, it was really be more general, you know,
Right,
and this is really taking away a lot of the interpretation of what it means, but giving detail to it. So,
well, not only that, but it's also, most of this is for the board,
yes,
right? It's really not, I mean, a professional can read this and get it, but I'm not sure a homeowner's gonna.
a homeowner may
Read it,
not,
get
but
it.
the architect who says I have to follow these design review guidelines when they come here to present,
Yeah,
they're written and they're not subjective. They can't, you know, there were some, I thought, some really good points. I think we did get bogged down with still what is a
Structure.
not a
No.
structure,
Development.
but
no,
you know, like the house.
if it's not,
Development zone. That it's the development zone.
So Dan, why don't you scroll through and look for red text, because that's what's changed since you guys saw it.
Do you mind to make the bigger with the zoom?
With the zoomer.
Thank you.
So in that history section, their comments were, what are the eras of significance? So this is just a very short statement of that. And it's 1859 to 1975, and then in chunks of time for different kind of occupations by different people.
Incredibly helpful when talking about certain properties.
Are these all in the actual nomination, the various periods of significance?
No, because the nomination is only for Fort Lowell. It's only for the fort. That the one that they did in 1978 was only for the fort. We're doing a new one. We're doing a new one now, where it will go through this whole era, all of those eras.
National Register.
Yeah, if there is still a national register.
I think this is so helpful because this is, you know, it's part of the development zone concept is what is the period of significance, especially when restorations are coming up, and it has been somewhat lacking in
Good
some of the
scroll.
proposals I've seen of what period of significance are we restoring to. Like even with the commissary, there's been a lack of understanding whether we're going to a fort complex or this 1930s artist colony.
The other comment from PRS was definitions. When we say compatibility, what are we talking about? So most of these definitions are from the UDC. And again, it's just for the benefit of non-professionals, really, right? or non-historic professionals. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I like that.
Applicability. This goes to just some more language about where is it applied. Go ahead and scroll down. Well, I'm gonna send this out. Everybody can read it. And no,
When you're done with the.
no, there's too much to actually go line by line, I think.
Oh,
Um,
and I think it was really important, if you go back up one, there was a red bullet for pools and pool fences.
Right.
That
we
those
added that.
are in there, and they are in the UDC.
Clearly structures.
Yeah. Landscaping, this is from the technical standards manual. It said about landscaping. Clarification that it's associated with a case, it's associated with a full or minor review. But then when we talk about landscaping, we'll come back to this topic. Go ahead.
Can I see the last sentence? So. Okay. Yeah, let's see this. Okay.
But then what's landscaping? That's going back to the terminology of the
Yeah.
definition of landscaping, right? Classifications, they asked for a description of the classifications, and this is pretty much all right out of the code too. But it was really hard to find the contributing non-historic property definition.
But it
So-
was in.
It's in there, yeah, and like your house, David, is a contributing
Mhm.
non-historic, right? So what's the difference in that and a historic? And what's the difference in that and a non-contributing?
Mm.
I think pretty much all the structures in this zone are contributing. I don't know of any that are non-contributing or intrusion by definition. And go ahead down, then contributing, contributing historic, what's meant by just contributing or not, right? Intrusion,
Oh, it does, yeah, it helps me.
in the preservation zone, it's about compatibility with the development zone. And this idea that we have, this is one of the things we'll talk about a little bit later, but the development zone, if we have to comply with what they consider to be a development zone, even though they say Fort Lowell is different.
Mhm.
It's like Fort Lowell is different, but you still have to follow the same
Mhm.
rules as everybody else, right? Even though you don't have blocks, you said one big block.
Yeah,
Right. So there's a little more language about that down here where it says that your advice to seek guidance from city and request a courtesy review. So that this can get hammered out at the first and not a year later. New construction. You guys have seen most of this, just some refinement. There was considering, wait, go back to considering. Oh, site plan landscape as a whole, they pressed that. The site as a whole should be considered, not just, that's, different aspects of it. Parking. Go ahead. Additions and modifications to the rear. And then the other thing they asked for was, we had these pictures in our design guidelines, but we didn't have any description of what they were. So with help from somebody very talented, well, actually a couple people, but one in particular who put the language together. We're explaining what we mean by these styles.
That's great. Because to me, from like a consumer standpoint, this is the most important when you're sitting down for the first time with your designer. Say, this is what I'm thinking about as I endeavor to do a big change to my property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, because you guys can read these.
So much work, Elaine. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's only 2 years. This information was good. It talks about Adobe and how to treat Adobe, and this actually came from one of the commissioners who said he helped write it, which was good.
He actually helped write it. I mean, these PRS folks were really accommodating.
So it's treatment of adobe, burn adobe, paint, sealants,
That's great.
bricks, you
Fantastic.
know, all of that kind of stuff. Architectural detail, windows, again, got advice from the commissioner about how to talk about windows. You know, double hung, single one, some of the terminology to just clarify that. And then it does say the aluminum siding windows, or that's sliding, but I think it's in the next page, but aluminum sliding windows are not allowed.
Yeah. it's-
But
Right.
aluminum, yeah, but keep going down. Wood clad, and then that's technical standards, yeah,
Would-
metal clad wood windows. With appropriate twim, maybe approved.
Is,
Um,
is that what you have here? Is
this is not, those are all wood.
Just all
Yeah,
wood?
no, but think about what went into the big new house. Right, so those were aluminum, they're aluminum, bronze, aluminum windows. And they're intended to suggest wood windows, but they're not wood. And then when people replace windows, they want to use vinyl. And you're like, no, don't use vinyl, that's gross. But it still says no vinyl. And then here's landscaping section, and I would like you guys to take this and read it, because see if you get it. Because
So this
it
is-
took us a while to get it. Why don't you talk about it?
This is why we went to the HLS. I went to the HR commission. Issues we're having. And based on their advice last week at the meeting, we modified some of this wording so that it's more. It's more suitable with regard to how we do reviews, how we view landscaping versus say landscape. Right, and so this is a kind of a difficult distinction, but landscaping, as it's written in the code, is a verb. Landscape is pretty much everything we see around us that can be disturbed, modified, you know, cut down or changed, right? And so
And that definition's right there, landscaping, aesthetic, modifying it for aesthetic purposes through plantings, hardscape structures, right, fountains.
So what should we be landscaping colon? Is that what?
that's
We're
this
paying
is the-
attention, right?
Yeah.
The definition as far as OED is concerned, and I can pull up the UDC definition as well.
And then landscape is the paragraph below that.
Like sheets.
So
A
this
little
is,
more
it's a, yeah, it's a
subtle.
little more nuanced, because the idea is that we don't want landscaping to be involved with some of the natural features of the neighborhood that must be preserved, or cultural elements, right? So, yeah, maybe let's, you know, go ahead and read through this if you would.
And Dan Bursuck, if you would read this too, please, and since you're involved in some of those conversations about landscaping.
I can
Yeah,
also
most
read it.
definitely. I'm happy to review this and
Yeah,
you know,
the
we
other,
can
the
provide
other
some
piece
comments.
that we put in here was, there were, you know, we need to also understand when the NPPO comes into play.
Mhm.
And the commission, the subcommittee said 14,000 square feet of disturbed terrain. So that's a big chunk, but it's like a third of an acre.
Confused, native plant preservation.
Yeah. And he said, so he said, you're never gonna hit that. And I'm like, we hit it. We hit it all the time. It's a. we're a real
Yeah, you
historic
may.
district.
I
Right,
think so.
the next 1 acre parcel,
We have coming up.
yeah,
We
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
yeah.
So these are considerations that I think are on the radar of homeowners, let alone potentially.
Builders. or builder, I mean,
People board.
and when we asked about it last time, they said no, doesn't apply here. But,
Yeah,
but in
we tried really
fact, that
hard.
property that got disturbed it got to disturbed to the tune of 25,000 square feet.
Hmm.
Right. and all the trees are gone.
across the street.
Yeah.
So, just to. After reading this definition, I think you were gonna have this in the footnotes, the see definition of landscaping. Or
Unless I need to, no. I mean,
if
I don't,
anybody's interested, I can read that aloud, but.
Sure, let's hear it.
you love the code, don't you?
I do. It's the
ABC
foundation of our roof.
Site. Materials for maintenance. So similar to Oxford's definition, Oxford's dictionary definition, it's an act of changing something. Right, so it's, this is when you're making some modification, adding some addition to the existing lot. And this sort of becomes key, is that historic landscape features should be preserved wherever possible. So, and we're gonna speak back to that. And this is looking at enclosed versus unenclosed properties. So if we have an enclosed area of the property, it probably could get a different treatment insofar as, we may want to plant a garden. Some crop varietals that are not necessarily, you wouldn't see figs planted along the side of the road in Fort Lowell, but in your enclosed garden, it's probably okay. Similarly, unenclosed areas that are in full view, we want to be to harmonize with the rest of the HPZ that you can see.
Beautiful.
Yeah. What's that milk pole? I'm not sure. No pole is cactus. So. Prickly haircut. So it's okay. Yeah, all right. Yes, and then non-native species are discouraged, invasive species and tall trees that would, obstruct view shed would not be allowed.
So their example there was, somebody wants to plant a palm tree, it's gonna be behind their 6-foot wall now. But
In a year.
in a few years, it's gonna be visible from here, right?
Streetscape roads and rights of way.
Okay, so
So
we
I wanna
need
talk about
read
that
this.
1 second. Yeah, you
Okay.
need to read it. Streetscapes and right of ways. So really, Fort Lowell Road and Craycroft Road within the HPZ have cultural, historical, environmental significance, right, for this HPZ. And there's also references in historic maps as the road, they call it the road to the fort. Even the first map of Fort Lowell Road is still called the road to the fort. So this, and then the archaeological surveys of the Hardy site. The Hardy site comes up to Beverly, really. So all of that could be considered, a cultural asset. It's a cultural asset of the historic zone. So in that sense, I think we'd like probably need a kind of a determination on this, but about whether changes to the right of way or the streetscape should go back to the historic landscape subcommittee.
Well, and I want to clarify something that we heard today walking along the road, was that if it's in the city's right of way, that it definitely has to go back through that. Right? Or,
Not
No.
at this point. I mean, what do you
because,
mean?
well, some of the areas on the north side were very deep
Mhm.
and have like, I think at least a 20-foot right of way for the city that owns it along the road.
Yeah, not in the historic zone. It's like right across here, you're talking.
But not in the historic zone. So
No,
as soon
it's
as it
much
comes
closer,
into
yeah.
yours, it's gone.
It's maybe 10 feet or something,
Uh-huh.
yeah. But you can still plant in the right of way. Right. So anyway, this is another addition.
By the schoolhouse,
Mhm.
by the
That's
schoolhouse.
different. That's actually not right of way. That's city property.
It's
That's a
city
parcel.
property.
Those are two parcels
That belong
that are
to the
left
city.
over that belong to the city. Yeah.
Yeah, that is actually something I need to get more clarity. What are the mechanics of review for city right of way? I don't know if you know, Dan, or if that's something that we can follow up on.
Yeah, I think it's something we want to follow up on. The other thing that I just noticed is that we use the term scenic corridors. I'm a little concerned it might get confused with our actual scenic corridor overlay. So we may just need to adjust that language a little bit. That's
Okay.
the only
Yep.
other thing too.
Okay.
Perhaps we
yeah,
should pursue a scenic overlay.
And then cultural, ecological and environmental features. So this is everything except landscape.
Yeah, so this is kind of the main thing that came out of the meeting. Is there are elements of state that are could potentially be affected by landscaping or by just their general removal. But they're things that need preservation in a different level. So this is something where we need to follow up on this and see how to go about this and talk to the city more and things like this. But for the sake of these guidelines, this is sort of what we what we think we should promote as a different topic, sort of in regard to preserving these elements. So basically, there are three subsections of this: cultural, ecological, and environmental. Cultural would be anything that's has something to do with
Constructed.
yeah, a man-made or human altered part of the landscape as it were, or part of the environment. Good example, this is the Corbett ditch. So there's some interaction with the environment, right? That's the idea, human interaction with the environment. These are cultural features that should not, so you can imagine if somebody wanted to regrade the Corbett ditch, we would want to say, wait a second, that can happen. So similarly, ecological features are those that are that potentially were extant during a historically significant period or associated with a human activity person or exhibit some other ecological or aesthetic value. A great example of this is heritage mesquite trees that are upwards of 300 years old. If somebody's planning to remove one of these, we may want to have a look at that before they do so, regardless of whether they're putting a structure there. Similarly, environmental features, and so this may be less applicable than the first two, but still applicable insofar as if you sort of see natural landforms. So the hill coming up to the chapel is a great example where this would never happen necessarily, but if somebody wanted to change that hill somehow, right? If somebody wanted to regrade it or add an element to it or cut a part of it out and put a little niche in it and a new, put a parking lot in it, whatever it is, right? These things need to be preserved because they're critical elements that are basically the identity and place component of our HPZ is made up of these elements, right? And without these elements, without the ecological features, without the cultural features, without the environmental features, the HPZ would not have the same identity, right? We wouldn't be an HPZ without these. So this is something that we think is critical to think about a little more deeply.
Yeah, in some ways, it's like the preamble that this is a semi-rural area. This is like an explanation of the understanding of what does semi-rural mean. It means that we have a topography and we have a natural landscaping and these various ecological, cultural, and environmental features. Yeah.
Good.
Okay, so Elaine, these are all the whole packet is going to come out to us when you're done with it.
Yeah, and I'm pretty
Okay.
much done. I'm ready to send it to you.
Okay, okay, and
Fences.
is there a feeling that we need to approve it again? Or do we just, it seems like we wouldn't have to.
Well, we
because
could do it in a special meeting.
the special
It'd
meeting-
be the easiest thing to do if you guys take a week and read it and just have a special meeting where we do nothing but approve it. Right?
Okay. Does that Desiree, sound okay?
I think we're gonna be back on the PRS agenda in 2 weeks. I hope.
Yeah, we have 2 meetings in June, but we'll work with Carrie to schedule.
Yeah. Depends on how many cases they have and.
Yeah, Carol has a lot right now. So the June 5th meeting is a special meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
This goes into walls and fences. Again, read this and see if you get it and you have any concerns about it. The second paragraph about front walls. about, you just have to read it because it's a little unclear
Okay,
about whether 50% of it is see-through at 48 inches and 66% of it is see-through at 72 inches
There may be a way.
Where did that language come from?
from West University.
Are we sure we want to go that route?
Well, the reason it's in here is because the PRS brought it up.
I see.
So if we want to change that, we need to, they'll ask us why we don't put it in. We don't put it in. They didn't say to put it in, they just said to look at it and see if it applies.
Okay.
Well,
I guess
section,
albeit, I mean, we could also modify it, simplify.
you could,
it,
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Which it might be good.
And is there some reason why they're using inches and not feet?
Thank you, Margot.
okay, so once you go ahead with
yeah,
That'll likely.
and then
Yeah,
just
yeah.
references, that's the end of it.
The only thing that I still wish this guidelines have is the plant list. Like, especially in regard to this more expansive understanding, like, is it possible to include it as an addendum to the design guidelines?
That was,
Not, well, I don't want to pour 20 pages of plant lists into our guidelines.
Can it be
They're
referenced?
books.
I
They're
think-
books.
Oh,
the books are rough.
It's referenced.
They are, okay, all right. And just how to access it. Like, or should it be something that is housed on the city's website potentially, even if it's not?
is it only in?
It's only in print, yeah, I mean, we could scan it and put it online. And,
And I myself have never seen the book. Is it like an explanation of each individual plant, or is it like a list of the plant names, like a
I'll give you the books.
Yeah, we'll give you the books, yeah.
It's more than a list. I mean,
Yeah.
it's an explanation, there's a diagram.
I'm talking about just a straightforward plant list. Yeah,
It's-
that is drawn from this reference.
Oh, right, easy enough.
But it's,
Yeah,
right.
it's there. You've got it, they've got it two different ways, essentially. So, yeah.
Yeah, to me, it would be nice to have the plant list itself, just the list, not an explanation of what these plants are and how they work in symbiosis with each other. But simply, these are the titles you should be looking for when you're shopping at the nursery.
But the book itself is a good 20 pages long and it is just a list.
It is just a list.
Yeah,
Okay,
so.
All right.
It's because it's like every shrub and every flower and everything.
There's two.
Yeah.
Yeah, both of them. Yeah. Okay, anything else on the design review guidelines?
Sorry, so sure.
Okay, but I
Well,
guess,
I
ahead.
actually have a question. Is there some reason why you include all the things that have been, have strike throughs? Can you delete that to make it less cumbersome?
I can give you a copy with all the changes accepted.
Mhm.
The reason it's that way is because PRS hasn't approved them yet.
Okay,
And they don't want to go back through the whole document. They just want to see what was changed since they
Okay.
last looked at it.
okay.
okay. Dan Hill. Enhancing community engagement with historic preservation. You had some thoughts on that?
Boy, do I have thoughts. So, I even brought a handout. And I can send this to folks who don't have it in front of them.
here.
I just neglected to do so.
Do you want me to read?
I can
Okay.
read it from there.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just gonna read this aloud, read it into the record as it were.
Do you want to send it tomorrow?
I can't, Margaret, is it all right if I send it to you after?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. And you're welcome to get a copy. Yeah. So, my fellow board members. Historic preservation efforts in Tucson have been largely successful in preserving Tucson's cultural and environmental heritage. Myriad examples of this success can be found all over Tucson and especially here in Fort Lowell HPZ. However, there has been an apparent decrease in participation in the historic review process, at least within Fort Lowell. Additionally, there have been several cases where the review process and or enforcement of design conditions have broken down. In some instances, property owners have done work without submitting an application to the city, thereby circumventing the historic review process. Worse still, in other cases that were reviewed, city-approved conditions of permit were not enforced by inspectors, which resulted in code enforcement actions and mitigations. These failures are costly to overcome, impact the HPZ board's reputation, and place undue financial burden on property owners. Preservation efforts can be complex and have compound problems, but there are simple solutions that may help mitigate these issues. First, historic preservation efforts should be proactive rather than reactive. Homeowners need to be informed early and reminded often of their responsibilities regarding historic preservation. Second, the application and review process must be easy to navigate, inexpensive, and rewarding. Homeowners should want to participate in this process. They should not be deterred by it. Third, simpler projects, especially those that champion preservation, should not be hindered by an onerous application review process that delays the project. This is particularly true for instances where repair or replacement in kind might help to ensure the integrity and longevity of the property. As board members, we can help to accomplish these goals with 3 strategies. The first being to improve outreach and education. It behooves the board to prioritize outreach and education for our community, as homeowners are the first line of defense and preservation. Luckily, I have yet to meet a homeowner in Fort Lowell who is not interested in being a champion in preservation. Additionally, board education, educating ourselves, is critical as we are the second line of defense and preservation. We must know our guidelines. We must know the technical standards. We must know the UDC well enough that there's no question about how to make recommendations. The second potential strategy is that we can suggest administrative and technological improvements to simplify the application and review process. And so obviously this is not so, the onus is not solely on us. These would be things that we would talk with the city about. The application and review process is overly complicated and rife with pitfalls where homeowners can become lost in the weeds. We as members of our community are typically more aware of these issues our neighbors might have with the application process than city officials. In this capacity, we are in a prime position to advise the city on changes to their process and policies that can help homeowners to more easily participate in the review process, and in so doing will likely ease the burden for city officials. A good example of this is minor reviews being difficult to apply for and taking, in some cases, as long as full reviews, so they should be much quicker. The third strategy, potential strategy, is to suggest or pursue UDC amendments. And again, this is something that would potentially be a process. We're not suggesting that this is going to be done overnight or that they're going to be the sole proprietors of these changes, but that we would sort of start the fire as well. Broadly, the UDC facilitates historic preservation. However, some elements of the code have become outdated since their inception, and others, while well-intentioned, have curtailed certain elements of historic preservation. For example, the economy has changed over the years. As the economy has changed over the years, it has become increasingly difficult to accomplish a minor project for less than $1,500. This would suggest that almost all projects must submit for a full review. This increases the burden on the homeowner, the advisory boards, and the already busy city officials. An ongoing discussion of suggestions for code amendment would greatly aid both homeowners and city officials in streamlining the review and improving preservation efforts. And so, while these strategies are just starting points, the means by which they are accomplished, the tactics that we use to accomplish them, I think need to be discussed here. We as a board need to agree on some of these methods, and it would be great if we could have a discussion. And so with that in mind, I move that we make these 3 strategies standing agenda items until we as a board are satisfied with these goals. With respect and gratitude, yours truly.
Thank you, Dan. this is a great document and it's a wonderful place to start. I know that we had talked at the neighborhood meeting of dovetailing with the neighborhood, who was going out to all the different HOAs. And I think that's a wonderful way to get started and it's gonna take every board member because not one of us can attend every one of those meetings. And we have to be in sync. And so I think it's a wonderful way for us to get going.
Also, I just want to point out, my tone is more because I'm nervous, but I was trying to read this more in an optimistic, you know, like this is a good thing, let's get some stuff done, not like, oh, this is. I'm sorry if I came from. Yeah, a little.
I know that the one place that when we've talked about this before, and I don't think it's in any way hidden in here. But I know that one of my concerns is that $1,500 piece and what people can do and say they're going to do. And then they do something different and say, well, you said it was okay that I replaced my window. And all of a sudden you've got a picture window instead of a casement window or, something like that. And those are the things that I'm nervous about in not having the opportunity to talk to somebody before they do it.
So I don't mean to suggest that they shouldn't be, minor review items. They should still be, somebody should from the board should still,
Okay,
review,
talk
yeah,
about,
of course. It's just whether or not it's a full review for, a window that you're replacing in kind, right? Do we need a full review to replace the chapel? Then surely be 15, right? That kind of.
right,
So it's, and also that's just one example. That's not meant to be the example. What my idea is more in that we would go through section 5.8.8 and sort of look at what has precluded us from being able to help homeowners through the review process, right? And if that, or, what has precluded us from potentially reviewing things that really probably should get reviewed, right? For instance, landscape. Yeah.
So I was making a complimentary tool to self-support myself regarding the topics that concern this board's review, because one thing that's very challenging is that the information is spread across 3 major documents. It occurs in the UDC, it occurs in the technical standards, and hopefully in our new guidelines that we're eventually going to get some new guidelines in place. And that's prevented me from completing this document because I don't want to put the old guidelines in when I know that we're engaged in this long format process to better explain what we mean when we're talking about landscaping or pool walls. But from my perspective, we would benefit from a worksheet that when we are doing the reviews, we do not have an actual worksheet to work off of concerning the areas that the board, and it's something that I've requested from the city multiple times, and I'm excited that there's a possibility that may get created now. That will be supportive for us even doing a topical checklist. And then ideally it would be able to interact with my resource key, which combines, for instance, looking at height. Okay, here's a regular topic that comes up with development of structures in our neighborhood. I've tried to pull the height information from both the UDC and the technical standards, as well as now our guidelines coming together so that when we're having that discussion, we can hone in on the code that is relevant to the conversation. So thank you, Dan. I like your forward thinking strategy, and certainly there's room for some process improvement in the code, having become a little bit outdated. And yeah, for me, maintaining the intent of the overall intent of the preservation code seems to have in instances been lost in favor of minutia interpretation of the code, which has been counterproductive to projects getting accomplished to the standards of the neighborhood's preservation zone.
So, I'm hoping I was allowed to make a motion in my letter. To make these standing.
Stand. I think that's great.
So
I,
then-
do you, I don't, I
know
think
that you
it's
need a
great.
motion.
I don't think
You
it
just
needs the
request
motion, you can
to
just
make
make
it
sure
Yeah.
to make an agenda item.
But I seconded.
Okay.
Anybody, all those in favor? If we need it, yeah. Anybody opposed? No, I think it's great. And I think that getting some ideas on how we want to go about that. Coordinating, I really do think coordinating with the neighborhood association to get out to the HOAs.
I think a lot of this can be accomplished too through subcommittees, like Briggs and I can discuss, you know, some of this. I can go and look at it and outreach. You know, so maybe get a subcommittee to work with the city for technological. components of this, right? I think a lot of the, you know, the application process as it stands now on the website sort of seems to be geared toward contractors, developers, architects. And if we have, you know, if we can advise, we
Really
can
not
say,
care how you do.
yeah, if we can say, hey, is there someone from the city we can work with to say, oh, it'd be really great if we just had a, you know, a branch that
Mhm.
says this is for homeowners,
Yeah.
right? And oh, you're a homeowner, do you need a minor review or a full review?
Mhm.
Right, and then it just kind of goes down a much more simplified, and then if, you know, that also gives you guys a chance to follow up, I think, in a more. Expedited manner potentially, especially for things where homeowners might be lost in the weeds.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be great to hear too, you know, you all have neighbors here and you probably hear more directly from people.
Yeah.
I mean, we do too, right? And there could also be things like, you know, survey, maybe we kind of ask, you know, poll people, what are their experiences been like, just to get, you know, broader input.
And also, it seems like potentially there's a opportunity for a pivot in culture around homeowners being able to get to this board before they begin their design process. Because it seems that the city has had a strong desire to be in the first position, for the first one to talk and get them going down a permitting track before they're having an informal conversation to get that education component in place and assure that they're using their design dollars in a good way. That's gonna be reflective and work in harmony with the historic zone.
And just make sure that that's apparent. With that piece.
Yeah, like even in this, yeah, homeowners, click here. Your first step is come get some preliminary education with the board where we can acquaint you with what the guidelines. What sections of the guidelines are gonna be relevant to your project.
And this is something too, I think, needs to go hand in hand with the outreach and education components, whereby we, as a board, are the responsible ones for helping our community understand where this stuff is found, how to get there, how to do it, how to, you know, get in touch with the city. And when, you know, then once they're with the city, they'll be armed with better tools, right? Rather than kind of not knowing what historic review is generally.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Great to work with you all.
I
Thank
think
you.
other boards, you can, start to meet other boards too, that are having the same problems.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities to improve our, to make it easier.
That was, you know, I mean, that was something that I think. I had it a little more strongly worded in the first draft of this letter, but. That it seems like the norm now is to apologize rather than ask for permission. Right, rather than go for a review, it seems like most people want to just say, oh, that's too much trouble, I'm just gonna get this done. If somebody catches me, fine, but then I'll go. Right, and we want to encourage, we want people to want to be a part of this process, right? Like, I think, and as I said, most of our neighbors want to be champions of preservation. It's just that, you know, this process is so onerous at the moment that they're like, forget it, it's just too much trouble.
Yeah, and the earlier. Emergency or semi-emergency,
Yeah.
right? Something like that, and that is something to hear about, right? People
Yeah.
kind of they submitted, they're waiting and they need
Yeah,
to replace their
yeah.
roof or their windows. so-
Contractors lined up or,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and that brings me to one more point that for me goes with this. Is feedback about what's happening with the people who've made application, like I believe there's 2 in the city that I know, or 2 in our neighborhood. The community center at San Miguel, and then I believe Tom Allen has submitted, I think, I thought he had, and so you haven't seen that one yet. Okay, well, the one that we know went in, and they are asking because they feel like it's an emergency. Can they go
the
ahead?
windows are about to
Can we
fall out.
meet with them? And the windows are about to fall out. So what do we do now? Because we've got somebody who's willing to be that champion. And how can we get information on what the status of that application is, or what?
I think so. I think that can be public. Is that right, Dan?
Yeah, it is public information. Honestly, like I had checked to see whether or not they have submitted. It doesn't appear they've submitted yet. After I gotten the email. But if they want to reach out to us, if they're having some issues with the system, we're happy to kind of help them through that process. I know that's
Elaine
been
made
a
the
little challenging for
application
some.
form.
I did the application for San Miguel, just out of curiosity to see how hard it was. And
Oh, Elaine,
it
when
was-
did you submit that?
3 weeks ago.
Ooh,
I think it
interesting.
was the
Okay.
14th. I think it was the 14th. that I submitted.
I
And
didn't
it's
see it
still
come
in a
through, but I'll
queue.
take another look.
It's in a queue.
According to your
And
staff
so,
board.
that is, it's a small, it's replacing
It's Bing,
windows.
the street is Bingham. Bingham. It's
Binghamton,
Yeah.
Binghamton.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
looked
they
up the
were-
address.
they
I
were-
couldn't
They
find
were
it.
not happy about the whole thing, and I said, let me submit it. I just want to know how hard it is. And it was hard.
Well, and anybody should know this neighborhood has watchdogs. Like people are going to notice if you're doing work on your building. That's just gonna happen in Old Fort Lowell.
No, they were willing to, I mean, once they understood that they had to do it, then their HOA board said, well, we have to do it, we have to do it.
But that's another component of rich education is that some of these communities that have contributing non-historic don't realize that they're under. They need historic community.
Yeah, but they.
And I mean, they like, and what I don't realize, I mean, I don't think unless there had been somebody from the neighborhood association who sits on the board, they would have just gone ahead with it.
Well, and that's one of those things where they don't even know they're.
Of course, yeah. They're not playing.
Like, we need a mailer to remind, we need a mailer.
A mailer, an email, an Instagram. It's like all of the to start letting people know how this works and everything.
Thank you, Dan, for bringing these comments forward.
Okay. Now, Dan, I know that there was something that didn't get on there, and I think it had to do with the landscape practices. Something like that.
So that was more addressed, identify what changed the guidelines.
Okay,
So here's the short version is the code explicitly says landscaping verb shall not be reviewed in isolation. And that may be one thing we as a board want to address with the code. However, doing so is not something we can do alone. We need, support of the city, we need support of other boards potentially. And so, that's one of these things where we need to discuss the tactics of how we go about that and whether it's completely necessary, right? And that's why I think it's important to be at agenda.
And whether it's time to update the language in reflection of the intent and purpose and being part of the contemporary conversation of what is affecting this zone. And all of the historic zones for that matter.
If I was to contact a realtor and was interested in looking at some property that was for sale, what are the chances the realtor would be familiar with what I was getting into?
It totally depends, but generally I would say that undereducated about how the preservation zones work, that there's like a vague awareness that you have a special zoning and historic overlay, but like the minutia of the process,
Yeah, sure.
that's not not unless somebody themselves as a realtor owns a home in one of the historic
No, I was
neighborhoods.
wondering to what degree a home buyer, I mean, the other, just generally familiar with what the expectations are gonna be. I was assuming that.
And the other
Maybe
side
that's
of
a
the coin-
note of outreach. I don't know if there's a.
Yes, that, and I think the other side of this point is that because the process is as it is now. I heard secondhand that some realtors choose not to divulge that information because they think it'll deter potential homeowners. So I don't know how true that is. It's just,
I mean,
here's the
imagine
imagine.
it could happen.
That's why we want this process to be,
And
No,
yeah,
How
we're gonna tell them.
the benefit is that you have some property value that you can do some. So you're that's giving to you as a homeowner.
No, but I'm saying the realtors,
Yeah.
they may say, oh, you're in an historic zone. They won't say anything about what that entails. And, you know, oh, if you want to change a window, you need to get a review. That's what I mean.
The spot lost on like the historic districts that are not actual full review zones, where people are, including us, are benefiting from the tax benefit on historic buildings. But that the zones are these special 5 neighborhoods that have a higher standard and have a review process. Which is different than, like, for instance, Sam Hughes has a historic designation. And those homeowners that have contributing homes can get a tax credit to acknowledge their maintenance. However, that is all user driven. There is no board overseeing Sam Hughes home improvements. And what do you get in Sam Hughes? You get complete contemporary makeovers where the historic character of the house is completely lost. So that, I think there's a huge amount of citywide confusion about the special overlay. Which is actually like, it's your zoning, it's attached to your property title. It's like your land is falling under this designation when you're in these neighborhoods. It's just very special because there's such a small footprint of the city that has this type of protection.
I think we're gonna close our meeting. Anything else? Any other commentary?
Did you want to do, there's a call to the audience.
Oh.
I didn't receive any comments. Or that was it. Okay.
That was our call.
Okay.
Unless somebody else has something. Thank you very much. Thank you. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
And June.
Oh, there was one other thing. We were gonna try to have this special meeting.
Oh, the setup.
We can. Oh, this special meeting when things are done.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're done. They're pretty much done, so.
We need to have
They
a,
just need
we
to
could
call.
probably do it all on
Call
Zoom.
a special meeting, yeah.
We'll call a special Zoom meeting